Last week, we said leadership exists because life has limit. Energy is limited, resources are limited, time is limited, intelligence is limited. Because we cannot do everything at once, every yes becomes a no to something else. And so someone must decide what gets done, what gets prioritized with what resources. That is leadership. But knowing what we must choose does not tell us what to choose. And this is where many leaders fail, not from lack of effort, but from acting before understanding. Think about what happens when you are sick. You go to the doctor. The doctor does not immediately say, okay, what is happening? And then hand you medicine. A good doctor knows that what you feel may not be what is actually wrong. The headache could be hydration. The fatigue could be stress. The stomach pain could be something you ate last week. So the doctor asks questions, runs tests, and traces the history. Only after understanding what is truly happening does the doctor prescribe. This is called diagnosis, but it is where leadership must begin. Many young leaders and many even experienced ones skip diagnosis. They see a problem, feel the urgency, and immediately think they can fix it. Treating what we can see without understanding what is causing it is one of the most expensive mistakes a leader can make, because we waste time, we waste resources, we lose trust, and the problem returns often even worse than before. Think of how many leaders in government, in organizations, in families have risked everything to fix a problem, only to watch it return within a few years, sometimes even stronger than before. Not because they lacked courage, not because they lacked resources or people, but because they never truly understood what they were trying to fix. Sometimes I wonder what some of these presidents go through when they watch the country they love and all the things that they did in service, and boom, everything probably just returns to the very same state. But one useful framework is called the 5 whys. It is simple. Just keep asking why until you reach the root. So it doesn't really end at 5, but just keep going until you reach the root. Why are so many young people unemployed in Africa, for instance? Because there are not enough jobs. Why are there not enough jobs? Because, there are not many businesses to absorb the workforce, or to create the value that is needed to provide employment to many people. Why are there not many businesses? Well, because the environment makes it difficult. High cost, poor infrastructure, limited access to capital. Well, why? Why is the environment so difficult? You could say, because the government has not built the right infrastructure or systems that enable development, rate are high and all these other policies. So why have these systems not been redesigned? Well, because the same systems and policies shaped the leaders who inherited them and produced more of the same. So it continues. But by the 5th why, we often arrive at something we can actually address. Diagnosis does not stop there. We also need to understand what kind of relationship exists between the cause and the effect, because correlation is not the same as causation. Two things can happen together or one after another without one causing the other. Not all problems behave the same way. The relationship between cause and effect determines how we must respond. Some causes are direct, one input, one output, simple to trace and fix. Others are delayed. The effect shows up years after the cause. Some are compound. Several small failures stack into one disaster or one problem, where fixing just one changes nothing. And some are misleading. Sometimes where the loudest symptom is not the real cause at all. And some are circular causation. This is where things actually get really interesting and I think quite difficult. The effect becomes the new cause. That means that it creates a loop that keeps reinforcing itself. When we at TGLC began researching Africa's current problems, we wanted to understand the true cause, not just the visible symptoms. The problems are not isolated. At least that's what we found. They're connected by reinforcing loops where one problem feeds another, which feeds another, which feeds the first. For instance, poor ethical culture weakens institutions and slows economic growth. Weak institutions and less economic growth, well, it leads to lack of job opportunities and unemployment. Unemployment deepens poverty. Well, poverty breeds a scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset fuels the rise of social vices. Social vices enable corruption and bad governance. Corruption and bad governance guts the education system. A poor education system fails to instill an ethical culture and develop good leaders. And the cycle begins again. Round and round it goes. Each problem feeds the next, and the longer it runs, the harder it is to break. Consider what happens when we try the obvious fix. We say, let us build a school, a really good school. Well, students receive good education, then they go home to families where leadership is weak, where values and principles don't matter, where accountability is absent, then return to communities shaped by the same patterns where they are influenced more by their peers who go to not so good schools. They enter workplaces where the culture is poor and rewards silence over integrity. So the person who shows up on time, who demands accountability, who refuses to cut corners or be corrupt, often becomes a target. Those who have been in the system for long pushback. The system does not reward good behavior, it punishes it. And over time, the person either conforms or often they just leave the country. Is that not what we see? This is what reinforcing loop does. One intervention, even a good one, gets absorbed and neutralized by a larger system. The school alone cannot fix the home. The home alone cannot fix the community. The community alone cannot fix the institutions. Everything is connected. Everything reinforces everything else. So for us, if the problem is a reinforcing loop, the solution must be a balancing loop, an intervention that creates counter pressure at multiple points simultaneously. This is why TGLC's approach is not to build one institution, but to build a network of leaders. We call it democratization of leadership development. Leader to one, leader to others. Leaders of themselves first, leaders in their homes, leaders in their communities, and leaders across every sector, schools, markets, community, media, social enterprise, etc. Just like I'm showing on the image that you can see. And these leaders are not to be scattered or to be left alone. They must be connected, bounded by one goal, bounded by the same value system. So we are training a network shaped by one training committed to one set of principles and values. And so imagine in, let's say, a few years to come, over 1,000 plus leaders across Ghana, part of a single network. Among them will be lawyers, politicians, pastors, business owners, teachers, parents, what have you, all trained in the same principles and values, all accountable to the same standards, all reinforcing each other. That is the balancing loop that we are creating as a counter solution to the reinforcing loop that we identified. Now, with this vision spreading throughout all of Africa, just imagine what the impact will be. Leadership does not begin with just action. It begins with understanding. Before you fix, diagnose. Before you prescribe, trace. Ask why. And keep asking. Identify not just the cause, but the kind of relationship that exists between the cause and effect. So, for instance, how can this help you in your own life? Assume you're poor. Why are you poor? Keep asking and keep asking and keep asking until you can get to the root cause. And then go back with first principle thinking to understand what are the basic axioms that are true about you, true about money, true about your situation, about life, and begin to build from there. That way, you tackle the problem from the root instead of trying to fix something that may not really solve the problem. The leaders Africa needs perhaps are not the loudest. They are the ones who see clearly, think carefully, and build wisely. So until next week, Lead today, lead yourself so you can lead others. We are TGLC.